Hello, this is Unit 1, Lesson 7 of Math 1 or Algebra 1, Inequalities in Word Problems. Here is just a quick review about inequalities. And I did make a video about this, so if this does not make sense to you, then please go ahead and check that video out. But just as a basic review, inequalities are a range of solutions to a problem. So instead of having an equal sign, we have an inequality sign. And a different number of values will make the equation true. And that's why I call it an inequality, because there's not one solution, there's a lot. These are what the four signs look like. We have greater than or equal to, less than, and less than or equal to. And I want you to quickly hold your left hand up, and I want you to see the sign that your pointer finger and your thumb make. And you see that it's the left hand less than sign. So that's just a good way to remember it. Left hand, less than. Whatever sign your left hand makes is the less than sign. So inequalities often look like this, and normally, in simplest form, this is what they look like. They must always only have x on one side in simplest form, and if it's not, then you have to rewrite it or solve it to make sure that it's always x or the variable on one side. And the steps to solving an inequality are the same as the equations. So just keep that in mind. Again, there is a video already on this, and if this does not make sense to you, please go ahead and check that out. So let's go ahead and do some word problems with inequalities. And these are the four things that I'm going to do. First, I'm going to highlight what we know after I read it. An amusement park charges a $25 entrance fee as well as an $8 fee per ride. If you have $105, how many rides can you ride? So we know that there's a $25 entrance fee and there's an $8 fee per ride. The word per gives us an indication of something, so that's important to keep in mind. And we have $105 and we're looking at how many total we can ride. So let's go ahead and just write that down. So if you do not remember, because it's an entrance fee and you only enter something once, you're paying this fee only one time. This means that it's a constant. In case you need a memory, constants are not affected by variables. And we know that we'll have $25 no matter what we will pay, even if we don't go on any rides. So let's go ahead and write down 25 here. And then we have an $8 fee per ride. We're trying to figure out how many rides we can ride. That's something we need to know. So that means that if each one is $8, if we ride 2 is 16, if we ride 3 is 24. If we ride x, it's 8 times x. So we got 8x. And lastly, we have $105. We're looking for how many rides we can ride. If we have $105, we cannot go over $105, which means that our sign is going to be a greater than sign. 105 must be greater than whatever value you spend. And I added a plus because $25 plus how many ever ride money you spend has to be less than the $105 that you have. This might make it a little easier. So this is our inequality. That's what it looks like. Now we'll go ahead and solve it so we can see what x is. And when we solve, we're trying to find x. So let's go ahead and find x. First step when dealing with inequalities is to, again, just work with the things farthest away from the variable. The opposite of addition is subtraction, so we do it to both sides. We're leaving us with 0, 80. $80 is going to be less than or equal to 8x dollars. We have to get x by itself. So we do the opposite of multiplication. We divide both sides by 8, leaving us with $10. Well, it does not leave us with $10. We'll bring down $8 to both sides, so we'll cancel out the dollars, leaving us with x equals or less than 10. This means that we are allowed to ride on a maximum of 10 rides before we go over our budget of $105. So our answer is 10. He can ride a total of 10 rides. All right, let's go ahead and read our second one. Your average in a math class is 87. You want a 90 as your final grade in the class. Your past test scores are 70, 85, 95, 93, and 92. What is the lowest that he can score to get a 90 in the class? So we're looking for the lowest he can score, and we know this is his grades, and this is what he wants. We don't need to highlight this because these two are equal, but this is more important than that. So your average in the math class is 87, and then we have test scores. So we can just use our test scores as the first one. So we've got 70, 85, 95, 93, and 92. Those are our test scores. And we know we have one more test after this. So we can add x. And in order to find your average, you need to divide the number of numbers you have by the total. So you add up the numbers on top, and then you divide by the number of numbers on the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. X counts as a number here because it is a test score. So we're looking for the lowest he can score, which means the end, it has to be 90. So we can just write 90 on this side. This means that we need to make sure that this right here is bigger than 90. So we would draw it like this. And now we solve like normal. The first thing we have to do is deal with the stuff farthest away from x. In this situation, that would be 6. Remember, it's going to be the opposite of PEMDAS. So we'll start with the one that's farthest away, which is multiplication. We multiply 6 to both sides because that's what we are doing. We are dividing by 6. So we multiply 6 to both sides. 6 times 90 is 540. And now we have all of these numbers. So we can go ahead and just subtract all of these numbers one by one. And I'm just going to tack on an x here. So we'll subtract by 70 first, leaving us with 470. And we will just go on and on. I'm going to cut this out so that you won't have to see this and it's not as time consuming. Okay, so as you can see, I finished solving it out, and look at the final number we have here. After all of that, we are left with the number 105 must be less than or equal to x, which means that on this test, he has to score a minimum of 105 in order to get a 90 final average. So is it possible for him to even get a 90 average? No, because the max score on a test is 100, unless you have extra credit, but we're going to assume that there's none. So he cannot get a 90 final average. This may be what you're thinking. We have all of the space, and we have an average over here. We have an average over here, and we have all these numbers. So you may be thinking that these two are equal, which is not the case. You see, if you add an x here, that's going to change your average. So that's why you can't just add x to the average. It's not possible. So you can't do that no matter what you try. So you have to make sure that you use this long out method instead of using the shorter method. So, and it is time consuming, but it is hard, but that's the only way you can do it. Hopefully this makes a little bit of sense, and just make sure to remember that if you're ever dividing by a negative, you have to flip the sign. Hopefully that made sense, and thank you so much for sticking